Sukka. We're learning Perek Dalet Halacha Zayin and Hilchos Sukkah. Rambam begins. Sukka she'en lo gag psula. Sukka that doesn't have a roof is possible. We'll go down to the Peirush. The Peirush says, what are we talking about? That it had the Roshi Adafnois. They were stuck together like a tzrif, meaning they were three-sided. They had no wall. The walls were angled like a teepee or together. Or he placed one Oisha Samach. He took one Oisha Doif and he took one piece of wood, even if it, and he put it on the Sukka lekoiso, and he made it against the koiso. And this is called kamin tzrif. It's called a tzrif. It's not a full building, and that for those who gather, who trap birds, they have to hide themselves. So they make themselves places to hide in, and that's called a tzif. It doesn't have a roof on top. It's a triangle, and therefore this is what the Rambam says. The lotion of the Mishnah and Sukka Yutes on base. It doesn't have a roof. Doesn't mean there's nothing there. Obviously, if there's no schach with the apostle. Ima yagag. If it had a roof, afilu, even if the roof was only a tefach, or he picked up the side which is near the wall and he took it away from the karka tefach, so it's kosher because the whole thing is considered, as long as kosher is schach. If the wall that's laying sideways is kosher is schach, like a mat, then it would be a roof. Abelezer says it's posel, and Chacham say it's kosher. Aaron Paskins like Abelezer, who says it's kosher, which pasels rather. He says it's pasels, and the Brisa explains that Moeder Abelezer, if you pick it up from the karka tefach, where you took it away from the wall of tefach, it's kosher. Now, if it has a gaga tefach, or you picked it up from the ground of tefach, it's kosher. The Gemara concludes that the Mishnah is a das yochid, Rabbi Eliezer, and the halacha is really like the Chachomim, and therefore he says that a sukkah that doesn't have a roof is supposed to like the Chachomim. Now, here we're going to begin learning the lower part, and we'll see if it's not too long. The Maggid Mishnah cites that Rashi explains, we don't have it in our Rashi, that it's a tevach above the ground, and it doesn't go completely at an angle, and therefore it's considered like a roof. That the tefach above the ground is considered a wall of a tefach, and the angle is considered the roof. And if he did the reverse, he took it away from the wall of tefach, and that tefach he put on schach, because there's a tefach of schach, it's not sideways. That's another interpretation. And he cites that the Achroinei HaRishonim, the later Rishonim, explain that's only when obviously the walls are made of something that could be kosher or schach. Because then you can say that instead of being a wall, it's a schach. But if it's not made out of something that's kosher or schach, you can't do it. And it has to be 15 tvochim long, the triangle, because then it'll come out that inside the sukkah you have 7 on 7. Otherwise, you won't end up in an area of 7 by 7. Now, the Kesef Mishnah is of the opinion that this is what the Rambam codifies as well. We'll turn the daf, because there's no proof from what he says whether he disagrees. That obviously you need to have a minimum shiur of 7 by 7, even though Rambam doesn't say how long the side has to be. Obviously you need that 7 by 7. But and anytime you have something at an angle, in order to reach the same, whenever you have you have an L, each side is 10 by 10, then the cross will be larger, and therefore it has to be longer. The Re'im cites by a kilo that you put on a sheet, on a stick, which is put on the side of the bed, in the middle of the bed from one edge to the other, and it goes down from on both sides like a tent, and there at the bottom it's as wide as the bed, but at the top it's as thin as the stick that's across the bed. He paskins that if the top has at least one tefach and it's 10 tvachim high, then it becomes a separate sukkah within a sukkah. The bed becomes a separate sukkah. These beds are called canopied beds. And you're not allowed to do it unless it's less than a tefach at the top. The interesting thing, if it's less than a tefach on the top, is that you can go ahead and sleep in it. If it's raining outside, you can have this cover over you, as the Bostoner Rebbe the first one on Mosdos used to do in a sukkah when it was raining. It gets a Mishnah, and it says here it has to be 7 by 7 tvachim is the smallest sukkah, and in a kilo, 1 tefach, basically we're ending up with 1 tefach of a roof. Either if it's away from the wall, a tefach. When it's away from the ground, a tefach, you can say you have more than a tefach because you consider it as an angle. But if it's away from the wall, a tefach, you only have a tefach. Why should it be kosher? So the Kesef Mishnah explains that you can't sleep under a tefach only because it looks like a sukkah within a sukkah, because it has a tefach, and therefore people could make a mistake. But it doesn't mean to say that it's really a sukkah. It's just that something within it's a place of dwelling within a dwelling. Furthermore, that's why it's possible. If you sleep in a sukkah in a canopied bed, that the top of it is a tefach. And furthermore, he explains that whenever you have a tefach on top, there's a din of oil, and therefore it doesn't become bottled to the sukkah because it has its own law of tent, and therefore it's like sleeping under a sukkah which is posel, which is found within a kosher sukkah, and therefore you're not yoitzer. But a sukkah that's made like a tzrif, as we said, at an angle, or it's either against the wall, and he either picked up the end from the karka, a tefach, or he took it away from the wall, a tefach, the inner space has to be 7 by 7, high 10 tvachim. And he asks on the Magid Mishnah that he says that he picked up from the karka a tefach kshero. He doesn't have to have in the wall, in the dafnois, 16 tvachim. Why is it 7 tvachim on 7 tvachim? Called a small sukkah, when this one is even smaller than it, because we only have a tefach at the top. And he tries to answer that only the ground has to be 7 by 7, but the schach doesn't have to be 7 on 7, which is a difficult question, a difficult explanation, because usually you're living within something that has to be, you have to have 7 by 7, and we know that if you don't have, if the area on the schach is 7 by 7, and only 1 tefach is kosher, it's not a kosher sukkah. So Rabbeinu Manoach is of the opinion that you have to have these 16 tvachim, except for the tefach that stands, like the Kesef Mishnah. He cites Tosus in Sukkah 19b, that walls that go in at an angle have to be 17 tvachim. 10 tvachim for the wall, and another 7 because of the schach. It's as if you bent it in half, even though it's not bent. And as we said, it's made of material that's kosher for schach. And he brings the statement of the Baal HaShlomo that after it goes up from the ground, in the middle there should be, that space should have at least 7 by 7, and even though afterwards beyond that space of 7 by 7 it becomes lower, it's still kosher because he took it away from the wall of tefach. Rabbeinu Manoach explains, like Tosus, that you have to have at least yud tvachim above the ground at an angle where you have 7 by 7, and everything has to be schach kosher, because otherwise there's no schach. We consider what he has 10 tvachim above like a portion of the schach, and therefore it has to be kosher schach. The Shulchan Aruch in 631 to Fresh Lamed Aleph, subheading 10, says Sukka, Halacha is, it has no roof, meaning that the two sides were connected to each other, like a tzriv, or, as we said, one angle against the wall, it's possible. The Halacha says that he made a third wall as well, because if you only have two walls, anyway, it's possible. The Mishnah Berurah adds, even if he made them from schach kosher, it's possible, because we do not have a wall or a roof in these two situations as they stand. Shulchan Aruch continues, if it had a roof of even a tefach, meaning the two sloping sides didn't meet, but they were separated by a tefach, it's kosher. The Mishnah Berurah explains, it doesn't matter whether he did it like a tzriv, or it didn't go up to the top at an angle totally. They left at the top a tefach between doifel and doifel, meaning he bent the top part and it now has a tefach on top, or he put it against the wall and it's distant from the wall a tefach, and that's where he had the kosher schach. It's considered anything that's less than 10 tvochim, less than 3 tvochim from the wall is loved. So even though it's open, it's like it has a roof, and even if he left it with ear and he didn't put it on schach, till now we said we should put schach on it, even if he didn't put on schach, it's kosher, and it's called a gag, and it's kosher. Again, because we look at the wall as if it's bent in the middle and becomes a roof. Shulchan Aruch adds, or he lifts it up near the roof, in other words, he took what was leaning against the wall from the ground, he picked it up at tefach, so it's kosher. Mishnah Berurah explains that even if the tefach is ear, since he put the koisel on stones, it's kosher. Anything less than 3 tvochim is as if it's a wall, and that tefach is considered the wall. So you have a wall. The rest of it we divide up as being part wall and part roof, in order to gain an inner space of 7 by 7, which has a schach. There are more sites. There are those who say that the tefach should not be ear. Only it can't be ear, although it seems before we just said it could be ear, but rather it has to be part of the wall which is kosher for schach, or actual schach, if you left only a tefach open at the top. And the Mishnah Berurah explains that the Rambam is of the opinion that even though you say lovud, so technically it's connected to the wall, but you can't call it a roof. It's true. So it's as if the slope extended. Why do you say it's a roof? And when you pick up from the ground, it can't be ear. It has to be filled in with something else, so that you can have at least the beginning of a wall. The Rambam continues, and the inner space at the height of 10 tefachim has to be 7 by 7, as the Torah wrote, and the other later Rishonim wrote, as the Mishnah brought them. But if, when it comes to the height of 10 tefachim, within the area there is no 7 by 7, then it's possible. How do you count the 10 tefachim? You count them straight, not at an angle, because again, at an angle you'll end up in a place where you don't have 10 tefachim. The Rambam adds, the walls have to be 10 tefachim high, that they're made of schach. And if it was made of something that you're allowed to, if it was made, nas, I should say, from something that's made from schach, you can sleep underneath them. The Mishnah Berurah explains that he probably is referring to if he had a bed, whether it doesn't matter whether below he had a tefach, whether he pushed it away from the wall, in other words, whether from the ground there was a tefach, or away from the wall there was a tefach, and he made a gag a tefach, then as long as you have from 10 tefachim and above, you can consider that you have a Sukka, a schach, and it has to be, of course, something that is made of material which is kosher for schach. The Rambam continues, Sukka agula, if it's around Sukka, so then in if it has in its circumference a square within it, you can place a square of 7 by 7 Even though it has no corners, it is kosher. Others say Sukkah Asuya Kishuvoch. A sukkah that's made like a lul, like a chicken coop of doves, which is round. It's psulo because it has no corners. So that's the Gemara said that's according to Rabbi Yehuda. He holds you need to have something that people live in. People don't live around buildings. Well, today you have some people who do things something like that. Now, we said that if it's round, if you can put in a square of 7 by 7, Maggid Mishnah cites the source of this in Sukkah 7b. Rabbi Yochanan says Sukkah Asuya Kivshon, a sukkah that's made like a chimney, which is round. It has to have within it 4 by 4, because he is the shiur. He's talking about the shiur of 4 amas by 4 amas, but the halacha the shiur is 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim. And if you can have within the circumference 7 by 7, it's kosher. Rabbeinu Menoach adds that every amma squared, this is the famous pie about circles, that whenever you have a square of an amma, you have an amma and 2/5 at an angle, that across them from one corner to the other, which is the way a circle would work, you have to have an amma and 2/5. And then you know that within it you have 7 tvachim. And here it was where children in yeshivas learn mathematics, and that's why they don't have to have mathematics necessarily taught to them. Shulchan Aruch in Tuvra Shlamed Daled in 634 paskins, if it's round, so it has to have within it the ability to put a square of 7 by 7. The Mishnah Berurah brings in the Beis Yosef a different way of reckoning whether it has a square of 7 by 7. If you take a string around the sukkah, and you'll have 29 tvachim and 1/5, then within it you can have zayin al zayin. It gives you a different way of measuring it. If the circumference is so big that you have 29 tvachim and 2/5, then you should know that inside you can put in 7 by 7. And there's a general rule: anything that has within it a tevach has around it 3 tvachim. That the diameter, the circumference is 3 times the diameter. And therefore, if you have a circle that it has 10 tvachim less 1/5, if we'll do 3 times, so then he goes into the cheshbon how you come to it, and we come to the same 29 tvachim that were mentioned before in 2/5. The Gemara brings the Loshen, the first language, that you place the square inside the circle, and what's on the sides you do not reckon in the 7 by 7. We make believe it's closed, because if you put a square inside a circle, there's empty spaces around the circle, which is more than a square. And we're talking only about the area of the square. We'll turn the page. And that's how the Maggid Mishnah Beis Yosef also explained the Rambam. And the Bach cites that in the Hilchos Mezuzah we find this so, but the Rosh disagrees. The Bach questions, why should Sukkah be different from Mezuzah? And according to the last language of the Gemara, it's kosher if you can have within it a square of 7 by 7. And maybe even, in other words, if you could take the circle and squeeze it so that it's no longer a circle, but rather becomes a square, it would also be kosher, according to one Lashon in the Gemara. The Rishon LeZion, the Meiser Keach, want to say that maybe only by a Sukkah Agula it has to be able to have a square. It's different than mezuzah, because you can't use the corners. Where it's circular, it's not usable space, and therefore you don't count it. But if he would make a sukkah which is 20 tvochim, even though its width is only, in other words, inside it's only 5 tvochim, maybe it would be kosher because he built a sukkah that's 20 tvochim long by 5 tvochim, which is 100 tvochim total. 7 by 7 is 49 tvochim total. So the question is the 7 by 7 necessarily a square, or it's the amount of area that you're using for the sukkah? And so the Magen Avraham and the Taz say it has to be 7 by 7, it has to be a square. If it's more than 7 by 7 tvochim, it doesn't help that it's longer. It is one place. It has to be 7, a minimum of one place. Then it can be as long as you want it to be. And but if it's less than 7 at any point, it would not be a kosher sukkah.